So welcome to the next in our online messages brought to you by the friends at Center Congregational Church in Lynnfield, Massachusetts. This is Reverend Tom Bentley, the pastor, hoping that these messages can help you in your journey of life. If you'd like to know more about Center Congregational Church, there'll be some information for you at the end of this video. So thanks for spending time with us. So grace and peace to you from our friend Jesus. I've mentioned often I use the lectionary readings that come suggested from the ecumenical groups, and they did it again. These are tough readings this week. Let's take a look at one of them. Woe to you who think you live on Easy Street in Zion. You? Woe to you who are rushing headlong to disaster. Catastrophe is just around the corner. Woe to those who live in luxury and expect everyone else to serve them. Woe to those who live only for today, indifferent to the fate of others. Woe to the playboys, the playgirls who think life is a party just held for them. Woe to those addicted to feeling good, life without pain, those obsessed with looking good, life without wrinkles. They could not care less about their country going to ruin. But here's what's really coming: a forced march into exile. They'll leave the country whining, a ragtag bunch of good-for-nothings. That's the prophet Amos. He's one of the earlier prophets. Things had gotten rather affluent in Israel, and the children of Israel, the Israelites, the Hebrews, are understood to be really the children of Zion. It's the land of Zion. And Amos is saying, woe to those who are at ease in Zion. That's how the translation often reads. And woe is a word, a cry of lament, particularly cried out at a funeral at the time. It's also a lament and a word of warning. Woe, woe. This is language of warning from a prophet who says, if people don't change their ways, things are going to really break into pieces. It's Amos the prophet, as the prophets always do, calling for justice. Justice, and in this case, distributive, equal justice. People are starving, people are hungry, people are in pain, and people who have far too much are indulging themselves to the point of just disgusting opulence and consumption. Does it sound familiar? Is it a lamentation about our own time as we live in now in the modern age of consumerism? Yes, it rings true, I think. In our own little church here in Lynnfield, Massachusetts, we are a generous church. Nobody can say anything to the contrary. We're not a big congregation in number, but we're generous of heart and substance too. This very Sunday, we have wagons upon wagons that you would use to haul things in our narthex, in our vestibule, waiting to be picked up by a poverty relief program in Chelsea, Massachusetts. This food is being connected now because we're trying to push back against the increasing crisis in food insecurity that's happening here in affluent Massachusetts. We're not idle and mindless of the problem, but the problem is huge. Our message today is difficult, yes, from the Old Testament prophet Amos, but also in the New Testament, when Jesus tells a story about Lazarus and the rich man. Lazarus is this poor, struggling, probably a homeless guy who comes to the door of the very rich person, and he's just dying outside the door, and the dogs lick his sores. It's sad and kind of disgusting, but he dies and he goes to the holy place. And then also soon thereafter, the rich man, who doesn't have any use for Lazarus, goes there too. And the rich man finds himself suffering in terrible pain and torment, and looks over, and there's far away is Lazarus in comfort and ease. And the rich man calls out to Abraham. He says, help me, help me. And why is this happening? And Abraham says, well, you had it good when you were alive. You didn't care about Lazarus. So now the tables are turned. And the man is pleading that something can happen. He says to Abraham, help. And then Abraham says, in all these matters, there is a huge chasm set between us so that no one can go from us to you, even if he wanted to, nor can anyone cross over from you to us. It's an isolation. It's a suffering. I'm not happy about the message. Do I think there's literally hell where people get fried for being bad in life and greedy? No. But do I believe there's consequences? Do I believe, in other words, that there is unease now someday soon in Zion, the nations? Do I believe that there's going to be a crisis of justice and breakdown of basic necessities? Absolutely, if we as a human family don't take a look at what the heck's going on and try to make a difference. All our private acts of giving and generosity are commendable, but to really mitigate injustice in any form, we must take up actions that are not limited to just private gifts and charities. No, our response that God usually calls us to do in the case of injustice and suffering, hunger, war, whatever, crime, we have to be collective in our response. On behalf of Zion, the nation, and the world, it's a communal action, a collective and communal act, not just personal. And all too often we, who in faith communities, speak of personal piety and personal commitments. Those are part of it, but they're not sufficient in themselves. We have to really step up and do what we can, and we always can't do everything. No individual can. I used to run homeless shelters for years and years. We had to house sheltered people, and we had to feed them and help them with services to break the cycle of poverty they were in and other suffering problems. And people would, in the staff, they would talk to me, and I say, look, let's remember who our customers are. Our customers are not the people we shelter and feed and take care of and help move along. Our customers are our donors, the people who want to be helping really broken, low-income and suffering people. But those people have jobs, these people that are donors. They can't stop their life completely, so they'll give us resources, and it's our job to serve them as our customers. And the fruits of their great generosity is lives put back together. Because ultimately we have to lean on our institutions. That's really the message that's behind the words of the prophet Amos. Because just as we are individuals within the institution of a country, a nation, a people, Zion, so the institutions that we build have to be as just as our own lives that are called to be so by God. We need to close that gap. We need to bridge it, if you will. Yes, there is a terrible divide, increasingly so, between the very poor and the suffering and the very affluent and the callous and the uninterested. And you know what? No matter how individually generous I am or you are, we're going down with the ship if we don't clean it up and fix things pretty fast. We have to understand that suffering and attending to that suffering is we have to see suffering as a social condition. Injustice is a social condition. Yes, it's suffering of one or maybe more people in certain circumstances, but that's always in the midst of the many, in the land of Zion. Martin Luther King said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. He said, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Our destiny rests with, yes, the people suffering, but also the people who are ignoring the matter and not seeking to make a difference. In my own town of Gloucester, Mass., it's on the ocean. I think of a story as an illustration of this. There was Richard Blinman. He was the pastor in 1643 in this new little community. And if you look at Gloucester, it's an island, all right? And the water, well, it didn't go all the way around. At one point, it joined the mainland. So it was like this odd-shaped peninsula. And if you had to get around the island, well, you really couldn't get across where it connected to the mainland because it was all this marsh and there was water, but it wasn't navigable. So Blimmen got permission from the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He was alone going to dig up, and it was called the Cut. He's going to cut through so that the oceans can connect. The ocean can connect along a tidal river called the Annisquam River today, and boats could navigate around the island completely. Well, Blimmen didn't do the best of jobs. It was an okay job. It didn't work for the community. And actually, years and years went on until finally the city of Gloucester stepped up with individuals and investors and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and even some federal money to make it right. So today you can go over the Cut Bridge, that's what it's called, the Blimmen Bridge, and you can remember the Good Reverend's attempt but failure at mitigating the problem. There's something in that parable and this idea that we can't do it alone. We have to work together, and that's work in itself, to bring people one to the other, to add their weight, a full and hard push against the wheel, a long, strong pull together. That's the only way that we can make a difference, to close this gap. This gap, it seems like it's infinite right now. It's not, I do believe. And it's not about the afterlife. It's about the life abundant now. That's where justice happens, not in some never, never land. No, it happens right now in your heart and our collective actions together. So in the spirit of that, getting together to fix this situation, I invite us to be with Christ, who joined peoples within peoples, has joined now billions of peoples to be one long spiritual righteous pull together to make this universe bend towards justice. Amen. So thanks again for spending time with us. If you'd like to know more about Center Congregational Church, you can go online at center-church.org. And of course, we'd always love to hear from you. You can call us at the phone number provided or the email address. So peace and best wishes. Goodbye.